Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with us right here on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. Well, Julius Kapwepe couldn't have been more prompt. He's already here to discuss with us the proposal by the Ministry of Finance to tax bank withdrawals, and if it's not right, how best can government, resource for plans locally, painless, yes, without actually putting a dent in the pockets of Ugandans within this country. Julius Kapwepe is the program manager, Uganda Debt Network. There is a letter that was written on the 9th of February this very year by Patrick O'Kaile. He is the Deputy Secretary to the Treasury in the Ministry of Finance. He was directing or urging, actually seeking for advice from the Bank of Uganda Governor, Mr. Mutebire, to actually avail to him and the Ministry of Finance data on bank withdrawals from the last 3 financial years. And their argument was that they were concerned. There is a tax on mobile money, 0.5% excise duty, but there is none on, withdrawals in the banks, counter and also agency banking in that regard. So we are going to be having this conversation with Julius Kapwepe, the program manager. Very good morning.
Thank you.
All right, the ministry, like I hinted in my preamble, the Ministry of Finance is in the middle of discussions to actually tax bank withdrawals. What do you make of this?
Precisely about that letter that was written by Mr. Uchairapa, the Minister of Finance in Uganda, was to do with consultation as part of the budget process for next financial year. And as such, he invited a number of stakeholders that were considered key in that respect.
I saw Uganda Communications Commission in that room, telecom operators.
Telecom companies.
Yes.
Yes. And precisely that's the genesis. But also
on the 5th of February.
The other bit of the extension of the genesis is that the country is yearning to raise more money, more revenues, since we have had a sharp decline in our revenue yield for these obvious reasons that have been occasioned onto our economy, the COVID being the obvious case. But also in the pre-existing conditions, there was a bit of hiccup in a number of areas. So that's the background of where that is coming from. It's part of the consultation process about the budget, and it is welcome. The challenge is...
So if all goes according to plan and they pass it, this proposal to tax bank withdrawals, let's talk about the ramification of having such a tax on bank withdrawals.
That proposal, first of all, is not going to pass. We know that His Excellency President Museveni will not accept it. He has always demonstrated that he's a listening president.
I understand Kapwepe, but then the same president has urged Ugandans to resource for money locally so that we can fund our own budget.
Yes, let's exhaust this particular one.
Yeah.
First of all, it won't pass. It creates a moral hazard. You cannot tax somebody multiple times. Local service tax and many others. And so it is dead from the start. By saying that you want to tax cash withdrawals, before COVID you had about 5 million bank accounts. Where we are now, we have about 2.5 million bank accounts that are active. By facing a risk of multiple taxation, you'll definitely have those accounts come further down. People will keep their money further away. So it's not viable. It won't happen anyway.
You've talked about it like it is a simple issue. Before the lockdown, we had 5 million bank accounts.
Yes.
Now we have 2.5 million. Where are the rest?
Precisely. COVID has caused several distortion to Ugandans at corporate level, but also at individual level, you and I. Some people don't even have what to put in those bank accounts anyway. So I think it is dead from the start, and I know that will not happen. Yes. Remember, it has also a bit of genesis of financial year 17-18 with the introduction of 0.5% or tax for that matter of mobile money withdrawals. If this passed today, it could also create room for even taxing other digital platforms, financial platforms
Julius
in the future,
Kapwepe,
in the coming financial
being in a country like Uganda, given the history that we've gone through, You can never say never. Anything can happen. We didn't think the OTT tax would come about. It is here. People will tell me, Romeo, I don't think this tax on mobile money will go through because the people who use mobile money the most are in the informal sector. People who are struggling, people who have lesser money. But then it happened. So, and the president is also telling us we need to look for money locally because the donors are not willing to give us money because of the corruption allegations, because of the human rights abuses and so forth. So how can they resource for money or raise tax revenues locally without doing it with a lot of pain? How can they do it painlessly?
It has taken a bit of more seriousness. If you looked at the proposals or the outlook for the next financial year budget, for instance, there are good prospects to the extent that they are implemented in real terms, not in theory and good speeches and the dancing magunju and the arakara dance, and then we walk back home to business as usual. An example is there is a whole lot of potential and effort we've put in coffee exports, coffee production locally, and productivity, but also exports. New markets like Italy and Spain, where we are now outcompeting the Vietnams of this, that hitherto were formidable forces. They are like the Manchester United of today and of the then days. Sorry to the Arsenal guys. And so that opportunity can be utilized of strategic coffee exports to China, to India, to a bit of India, but more so to Europe. And there is, in spite of COVID, there is an opportunity. There is a whole mineral revenues spectrum that includes curbing the illicit financial outflows. The inflows we can always discuss, but the illicit financial outflows associated with the mineral exploration and exportation. Let me just give one quick example. If you looked at Muko, which is in southwestern Uganda, between Kisoro and Kabare districts, Rwanda and Kabare districts, and Kisoro area generally, the prospects for iron ore, once we paid attention as a country by real investment and having iron ore processing out, we would conquer as Uganda the entire Great Lakes steel market. What an opportunity. So that is not going to take the faint-hearted. That is not going to be a quick gain, but a strategic kind of.
But here's the problem, Julius Kapwepwe. Government has been adamant to release information on the natural resources within this country. We do not know how much gold we are exporting. We do not know how much of these minerals we are exporting. Did you know that gold was the biggest export in Uganda in 2019? How much of that money was used to service the budget? So those are some of the issues we are talking about. It seems like the minerals are here, but there is no accountability. Gold is being ferried out of this country without any tax on the investors. What is happening?
That, for instance, that there is no tax on mineral exportation is not a fact. The declaration or the under-declaration thereof is what we could discuss. The other bit is that if accountability in the mineral subsectors is the issue, precisely let's tackle that one. The other question may be, how do we do with it? How do we reconcile the figures of declaration figures at Bank of Uganda, for instance, vis-a-vis what is declared at Uganda Revenue Authority in form of a tax? That can be looked at in more detail, and we plug any gaps thereof that definitely are. When you look at the government figures, there are gaps in that area. But the challenge then is not the mineral wealth that the country has, but rather that the accountability that we would expect governments. And one of the ways to go about that is to publicly, regularly on radios. His Excellency President Museveni had given a declaration that every media house in Uganda should give 30 minutes to government programs and let government officials come out and explain where these minerals are and how we could utilize them, and also how much progressively have we got out of these revenues. Of course, lastly, what you talked about on the oil being gold being the leading export earner now, that has happened over the last 4 years. To date, surpassing coffee, surpassing tourism, and many
how
of
come we never
areas.
see some of this money come to service this budget and so forth?
The money definitely services the budget in form of tax revenues, but also in form of non-tax revenues. And if you notice, the tax revenues in Uganda are increasing, and so are the non-tax revenues, including those contributed by the mineral subsector. So there are opportunities. We just need to be seriousness, to reflect seriousness, like I said earlier on. And this country will be booming. The other aspect quickly is, for instance, during COVID lockdown and the many speeches and counsel by His Excellency the President, there was where he talks about the real economy versus vulnerable economy.
Yes.
That we can put agro-industrial capacity to use in Uganda, and we are able to have a whole spectrum of dealing away with unnecessary imports. Pharmaceutical products, for instance, many of them can benefit from the input materials like cassava products and many other products, maize products that we have locally here, cereals, and then offset the otherwise money that we lose to those other economies unnecessarily. So there are big opportunities.
I was talking to one economist from Chambago University, Mr. Muhirwe, and he was telling me that gold investors that come to Uganda, when they get that gold and they take it to outside Uganda and export it, it's not taxed. Is it true? And he also told me that the artisanal miners who are getting that gold dust that is actually having no money, they are taxed. Yet the investor taking the big gold, big money is not taxed. Don't you think that is where we are having the problem? We are overtaxing the poor Ugandans.
Yes. As Uganda Debt Network and many other actors, we've done studies that reflect our concerns of policy revenue potential nature amongst the artisanal miners that you talk about. We also know that for a fact, the gold processing factories in Uganda, so far 2 of them, are paying tax. But there are also categories of other gold exporters. So according to Bank of Uganda, tax is being paid, certainly according to Uganda Revenue Authority. What we could contest, and what some of us actually think that there are still gaps, is on the level of declaration. We seem to see under declaration. Therefore, loss of revenue, tax and non-tax, to that extent.
Okay, let's talk about tax collection strategies that are not working. The introduction of OTT after the 2016 election. It seems to not be working a lot as we speak. Is it worth maintaining?
We gave counsel to government through Ministry of Finance and Parliament that OTT itself was bound to have challenges. Its intentions being to curtail communication in Uganda, as was said by His Excellency the President himself, was a bad idea. On ground, it has been confirmed that the yield that was expected so far has been up to about 20%. Do you want to maintain that kind of tax? The answer is no. It should have gone yesterday. It should have never even have started in the first place. Why? The amount of revenue yield you expected could actually be collected from a number of areas. And I'll just give one particular example, which we've re-echoed again and again. Thanks to the NRM government for good investment in today a very good road network across the country. Anywhere, Oraba in Western Nile, look at Moroto, look at the entire Moroto, Iriri and all those places. Look at Soro, look at the organ areas, look at Rukunjiri, look at Mitiana, look at Kabuoya, look at, my God, look at Mbale, up to Wakaka. So now you do not need high fuel gasoline vehicles that you required for bad terrain then, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. That has altogether changed. Even the Maram roads in Uganda maintained by the district and those called community and access roads are in motorable condition than they were many years ago. Therefore, you can have a whole opportunity of saving billions, in excess of 200 billions, if you reconfigured your government vehicles ownership and motorcycles ownership schemes. So why do you want to tax Ugandans with OTT, burden them, even when it is not working anyway, when there are all those huge opportunities? The people perhaps that would require huge gasoline vehicles could be the local government officials. But you are moving from Minister of Finance here in Kampala, going to your home, once in a while making a trip to Arua and to Agago on a tarmac road. You do not need those vehicles any longer. Government has an opportunity. Deal with that, deal with wasteful expenditure areas, save money, and let Ugandans enjoy their land. You have lots of recurrent spending.
I hear you.
If you looked at a budget of any of these government institutions, let it be NEMA, let it be Ministry of Finance itself, you can be alarmed.
Julius Kepepe, the viewer would like to know, what are the ramifications of overtaxing Ugandans, and are there any other tax collection strategies that could work?
One of the strategies is to utilize better what you have. And so the case of recurrent and capital expenditure that I'm talking about, that you can slash Uganda's recurrent budgets by 80%, except for a bit of Ministry of Education, teachers and all this, and still live better as a country without any problem. And indeed, attempts underway, Operation Wealth Creation and Council of Afande Sadim Sare has been done. There is confirmation that you can do away with this scale of wasteful recurrent expenditure, unwarranted, as one of the avenues. The other bit could be for government, again, not simply cross its legs and wait to go with the basket collecting money from Ugandans in the form of tax and non-tax revenues. What has government on its side done in terms of strategic investment? That requires a policy shift where government comes in to invest or co-invest in certain areas for purposes of revenue. Housing Finance Bank, Uganda Telecom as an opportunity, Post Bank as an opportunity. A government must have a central role in financial management and financial
all right, Julius Kepepe, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but we cannot leave without expounding on this very, very crucial aspect. The international community is freezing a lot of money that used to come to our coffers. Now, how will that impact our economy, and how can we reconcile the two?
That also needs to be interrogated. If you looked at the external borrowing as a case, that's what you are talking about, the international community.
The increasing pressure. How can we raise?
There is the increasing pressure. Let's look at the money bit of it, and then we deduce that pressure. It could also be just cosmetic. At projects level, we expect to get about 6.7 trillion shillings in the next budget, in the next financial year. But also, as budget support, we expect to get about 3.6 trillion shillings. So that tells you that that pressure, we need to convert it into an opportunity for trade justice. We do not have to keep on the pressure, on the whims of other people when we can do our own domestic strategic investment.
Very insightful conversation with Julius Kepepe, the Program Manager, Uganda Debt Network. I couldn't have been more prouder to have you speak to us on such great issues affecting the economy. Thank you. All right, you're still watching Morning at NTV. Yes, we are getting into another great conversation, the NSF Amendment Bill. Yes, what are the gains and the losses for midterm access? We'll be right back.